Talk about the white matter of the cerebrum. So the white matter of the cerebrum is composed of myelinated nerve fibers, which are supported by neuroglia. Neuroglial cells are basically supporting cells. So there are three groups according to the connections. We have commissural fibers, association fibers, and projection fibers. You can remember this with a mnemonic of CAP. So let's talk about the commissural fibers in more detail. The commissural fibers will connect two parts of the cerebral hemisphere. And let's talk about their further divisions, which are 5 in number. So we have CHAPF. Corpus callosum, habenular commissure, anterior commissure, posterior commissure, and the fornix. These are the divisions of the commissural fibers. If we talk about the corpus callosum, then you can see right here, this is the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is the largest commissure of the brain, and it connects two cerebral hemispheres, and it lies at the bottom of the longitudinal fissure. So this is the longitudinal fissure, and the corpus callosum is going to lie at the bottom of this. So now let's talk about the 4 parts of the corpus callosum. So the corpus callosum is divided into 4 parts. The first part is going to be the rostrum, then we have the genu, then the body, and then the splenium. Here you can see in more detail. This is the rostrum, this is the genu, this is the body, and this is the splenium. The rostrum is a thin part of the anterior end of the corpus callosum, and it is posteriorly prolongated, and it is continuous with the lamina terminalis. This is the lamina terminalis right here. Rostrum is continuous with it. Now let's talk about the genu. The genu is the curved anterior end of the corpus callosum. So here we can see that this hole is the anterior end, okay? So the curved anterior end of the corpus callosum is the genu, and it inferiorly bends in front of the septum pellucidum. This is the septum pellucidum, and in front of the septum pellucidum, we are going to have the genu. If we talk about the body posteriorly arches and ends as a thickened posterior portion, which is the splenium. So this was the definition of splenium as well. Now we are going to talk about the genu in more detail. So for genu, please remember this mnemonic. GFR is for genu. So if we talk about the GFR of the genu, G refers to the genu, F is for the forceps minor, and R is for the radiation of the corpus callosum. And this is going to lead to the cerebral cortex. So the genu is going to continue forward to form the forceps minor laterally. And then lateral to the forceps minor, it is going to form the radiation of the corpus callosum, which is going to interact with the association fibers and the projection fibers, and ultimately they're going to lead to the cerebral cortex. Now let's talk about the body. So some fibers will form the roof and the lateral wall of the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. And these fibers will also form the lateral wall of the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So these are the tapetum. So the splenium is going to arch backwards in the occipital lobe to form the forceps major. Now let's talk about the anterior commissure and the posterior commissure. So the anterior commissure consists of small bundles of nerve fibers that cross the midline in the lamina terminalis, and the posterior commissure consists of bundles of nerve fibers that cross the midline above the opening of the cerebral aqueduct into the third ventricle. So you're going to remember the same line for both of the commissures. Now let's talk about the anterior commissure in more detail. Bundle of nerve fibers will curve forwards laterally towards the anterior perforated substance and the olfactory tract. So laterally, you're going to remember the AO, which is for the anterior perforated substance, and the olfactory tract. And if we talk about posteriorly, you're going to remember L and T. A large bundle will curve on each side and grooves on the inferior surface of the lentiform nucleus to reach the temporal lobe. For the posterior commissure is related to the inferior stalk of the pineal gland, and fibers from the preductal nuclei will cross on their way to the parasympathetic part of the oculomotor nuclei. Now let's talk about the fornix. The fornix is composed of myelinated nerve fibers. It is going to constitute the efferent system of the hippocampus that passes towards the mammillary bodies of the hypothalamus. First, the nerve fibers are going to form the alveus, which is a thin layer of white matter which is covering the ventricular surface of the hippocampus. This is the alveus right here. And then the fibers will converge to form the fimbra. So here we can see the fimbra. The fimbriae of two sides will increase in thickness, and they will reach the posterior end of the hippocampus and arch forwards towards the thalamus below the corpus callosum. So please remember FPB for this. Fibra are going to form the posterior column of the fornix, and then they're going to form the body of the fornix by the joining of the two columns. So FEB, fibra, will form the posterior column of the fornix, which will form the body of the fornix. The commissure of the fornix will consist of transverse fibers that cross midline from one column to the other column before forming the body of the fornix. So the fornix commissure is going to connect the hippocampus formations of the two sides. Now let's talk about the habenular commissure. The habenular commissure is going to receive afferents from the amygdala and the hippocampus nuclei. Small bundles of the nerve fibers will cross the midline in the superior part of the root of the pineal stalk. This is going to form the habenular commissure. They are associated with the habenular nuclei on either side of the. The afferents are going to pass towards the habenular nuclei in SMT, which is the stria medullaris thalmi, and some will cross the midline to reach the contralateral nuclei through the habenular commissure.